You're listening to The Inspired Guide, episode 39. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I am your ongoing host, Darlene Victoria. If you haven't connected with me yet over on Instagram, I'd love to connect with you. So I can be found at DV Podcasts. I also have a website of the same name, dvpodcasts.com, where you could find all of these episodes and more. And if you're looking for some podcasting help, you can hop on over to darlenevictoria.com. In addition, I have a lot of articles and information on all things podcasting on that website. So now, jumping into today's episode. This episode is the first episode in what I am calling the Inspired Guide Legacy Series. So this is going to be an ongoing series, not just for the 30-day challenge. It is a series where I'm going back through my 11-year podcasting history and experience and re-airing some episodes that left a mark on me or inspired me in some way, or I feel just has that inspired guide theme and would fit well nicely in sharing it here on this podcast. This episode originally aired for a podcast I had created called Wham's Rock, Work at Home Moms Rock, with my bestie Jennifer. In the episode, we talked with Master Certified Confidence Coach Jackie Gartman, and we covered all things perfectionism, confidence versus competence, and the question, this is the part of the episode that really, when I remember and think about our conversation, what stood out to me the most was the conversation or topic of teaching our children self-compassion through the examples that we set for them. We also discussed calming negative voices in our head and self-promotion as women business owners. So I hope you enjoy this first of many legacy series episodes. This is my conversation with Jackie Gartman, co-hosted with my bestie, Jennifer De La Garza. I hope you enjoy it.
Jackie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love being here, so I appreciate the invitation.
Awesome. So it's important here to note, Jackie and I work together first as clients. Jackie is one of my clients as a virtual assistant. I'm her virtual assistant. And also Jackie is my confidence coach, and I'm learning so much from working with her and being part of her program. So I'm really excited to bring her on and share some of her amazing knowledge and experience with our audience here. So Darlene, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. And Jackie, welcome to the show. I will echo everything that Jennifer said, that we're happy to have you here. And the one thing that I wanted to mention is the fact that in your biography, you say you want the people you work with to live authentic and electric and purposeful lives. And I just love that word electric. So I'm ready to be electrified today.
Okay, the pressure's on.
Well, today we are going to be talking about confidence in all its glory. And before we really dive into the nitty-gritty, I'd love for you to take a moment to tell us what is confidence and how it differs from competence.
Really great question. So confidence is, I see it as a feeling that comes from the belief that we can create a successful outcome through action. So it means that we trust ourselves and believe in ourselves to the degree that we can achieve a particular task or master something like a new language or giving a toast at a wedding. However, and I've done a lot of research on the definition of confidence, and my favorite definition is this: confidence is the purity of action produced by a mind free of self-doubt. About trusting yourself even if you're unsure of the outcome. And I really, really like that definition. So, and competence is a significant difference between competence and competence. And I want to talk a little bit about how they're related,
Mm-hmm.
because competence is what often, and versus confidence is often what gets women into trouble. And there's a critical difference between men and women when it comes to feeling confident. Women often count on competence as a key to their success, whereas with men, it's not a factor at all. So studies have shown actually that women who apply for promotions who do apply for promotions only do so when they believe they've met 100% of the qualifications necessary for the job. Whereas men were eager to apply even if they only met 60% of the job requirements.
Whoa.
What does that mean what does that really mean to us as women? It actually means that women only feel confident when they're perfect.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I hear what I call a shadow laugh. Like, I relate to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's often why women have a hard time promoting themselves, which I know is a question that you had for me, is because women often feel like they have to, meet this, unattainable standard of perfection in order to feel smart enough or talented enough or good enough,
Mm-hmm.
or to, apply for that job or to take on that client, etc. Oftentimes as women, and I know this was true for me, I always felt like if I were a really confident coach, my confidence level would rise. And actually, and then I would be able to go out there and, get clients and, procure job opportunities, etc. But what I have found in my research is that confidence, not competence, is what influences people.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is often why you hear people say, I was up for this job promotion and so is this other person, and the other person gets that job promotion who is much less qualified because they were more competent, even if they weren't more competent or as competent as you. So when you don't believe that you're good, that energy gets transmuted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have that, it doesn't matter if you're competent. If you're not confident, your eyes can get shifty, right? Your voice rises, right? And these are kind of dead giveaways to that whoever you're in dialogue with or whoever you're trying to get a job promotion from, or even a job. So competence is a part of competence for sure.
Yeah, you basically answered what my follow-up question was going to be in that second half. So I find it interesting. So the scenario of men and women applying, going after jobs, whereas women don't do it as often because of their confidence level.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find that so interesting because I'm just imagining, like you said, the shifty eyes and everything. And whether you're competent or not, a lot of these higher level positions require that confidence. So if you're not showing it, it's not going to happen. So
right.
That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Jennifer, Jackie mentioned something about perfection, and I know that's one of our questions. So why don't you take the next one?
And Jackie, that was me shadow laughing, and absolutely, because you were speaking directly to me, I think. My question has to do with perfectionism and how perfectionism gets in the way of confidence and how we can calm that voice.
Yeah, great question, Jennifer. And by the way, you related to that, and I have a feeling that other women listening to this also related to it as well. It's very, very common and normal. And to talk about ourselves in the way, we'll say, oh, we're a type A, or I'm just a perfectionist. And, we wear that label like it's a badge of honor, right? You hear it all the time, right? Well, that's my perfectionist side, or I'm just a perfectionist. And sadly, perfectionism is a competence killer. Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way, really says it best. She said that perfectionism is not a quest for the best. It's a pursuit of the worst in ourselves, the part that tells us that nothing we do will ever be good enough, that we're inadequate, not capable, not smart enough, not talented enough. When I read that quote from Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, which is a great book, by the way, I'd recommend that you read it, it really left an indelible imprint in my brain, because I realized that really gets in the way of women expanding their competence, is when we hold this yardstick up to be perfect, and we don't give ourselves room to be human and make mistakes. And if we don't do that, if we hold ourselves up to these impossible, unreachable, unachievable standards, then we're never going to grow our confidence. And when we fail to, meet those standards, what do? As women, we typically beat ourselves up, right? And we say, I should have done this, or I didn't do this. And we ruminate and we overthink and we analyze and we self-recriminate. And, it's a horrible cyclical loop of negative self-talk. So your second question was, how do we deal with that? What is the antidote to perfectionism?
Yeah, how do we quiet that voice that tells us we can never reach that level?
Yeah, so the first thing is just being aware of if you have those standards. Notice, what are your expectations of yourself? That's a really good question to ask. What are you expecting of yourself and why? Also, be aware of your negative self-talk. That is really so critical. Notice what you're saying to yourself and ask yourself, would you say this to someone that you loved or cared about? Your sister, your mother, your daughter, your best friend, right? Because oftentimes we beat ourselves up when we don't meet our own, high standards. And when you become aware of that negative self-talk, I say, have an intervention, which means, hey, I notice I'm telling myself, or I notice I'm having the thought that I'm stupid, or I notice that I'm telling myself that I'm not smart enough to do this job, or I notice that I'm having the belief that, fill in the blank, your favorite, negative beliefs or self-judgments.
Mm-hmm.
And then consider changing that narrative, right? Oh, I can be a good and smart and talented and capable businesswoman or mother or wife or partner, right? And I can also make mistakes. So it's like embracing the duality of our strengths as well as our, self-perceived negative traits. Because you are all of that, right? We were all this recipe.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah, sweet salt. So I think that the antidote is really that. And also, when you fail or you make a mistake or things don't go as you had intended or planned, self-compassion is really the buffer against setbacks. So when you experience a bump in the road, being kind to yourself, being loving to yourself, keep talking to yourself the way you talk to a beloved person in your life. It's okay. You made a mistake. You're human. No one's going to die. The world isn't going to implode. Right?
Absolutely. This, again, speaking to me directly, Jackie. Definitely things I'm working on.
Yeah, all of us are. I mean, it really becomes, it's not yours. our culture and our society supports that, right? Look at how we raise our children, right? That they need to, be the best at everything that they do. And that is, and get A's, right? Even from kindergarten on. We
Mm-hmm.
don't really, our educational institution doesn't really support, making mistakes,
Right.
and being playful and tapping into that playful part and that childlike part of our personas, which is very sad. Everything is grade based.
Mm-hmm.
And how are you supposed to feel if, you come home and what did you get on your test? An A. Well, or B plus? Why didn't you get an A? A lot of parents will respond to, right? So, it's something that our society and our culture has ingrained in us, and so it's going to take effort and a certain consciousness and cognizance to be able to change that.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of touches right into my follow-up question. A couple weeks ago, Rudy and I, my husband, were talking about perfectionism because I definitely kind of wear that label, and for a long time have worn it, like you said, kind of as a badge of honor. I'm a perfectionist, and I do see how that has affected my kids. And so the conversation came around to, how do you know when you've crossed the line from setting really high standards for yourself, for your kids, for your spouse, and into a way overboard perfectionist?
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think, kind of circling back to what I said earlier, the difference is really examining what is it that you are expecting of yourself. So if feel bad about something, for example, you made a mistake and and you start beating yourself up, ask yourself that question. What were you expecting of yourself, in completing that task? Really, what are your standards? And, asking yourself that question will reveal, whether or not your, standards, so to speak, are really attainable, achievable or not.
Mm.
So if you say, well, I expect that, my son gets straight A's, well, that's a real setup.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think it's important to also ask yourself, what are your values? What's important to you when it comes to the work that you're doing, or the children that you're raising, or the partnership that you have? Is it more important to get that A, to be right, to achieve other people's definition of success? Or is it more important that your kids, for example, grow and learn, and to be able to handle those setbacks and be resilient and know how to cope?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I think how we respond to setbacks, how we respond to failures is will often reveal whether or not, what kind of standards we set for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the person who has realistic and healthy standards and experiences a bump in the road is the person who's going to say, okay, I screwed up. They take responsibility. How can I fix this? It's not the end of the world. It's not going to destroy them at their very core. The perfectionists will be very hard on themselves. Mm-hmm. They won't let themselves off the hook. They'll be very mean to themselves. They'll beat themselves up. They'll self-ruminate. They'll self-recriminate. They almost become obsessed and myopically focused on what they didn't do. So those are all tells or clues, mm-hmm. that you might need to circle back to, what is it? What are your expectations? And you get to decide that for yourself.
Right. I want to circle back a little bit, still on the same topic, but
Yes.
earlier you said self-compassion is the buffer to being kind to yourself, or something very similar to that. And then how we were talking a little bit about our children and in school with high grades, and then also, perfectionism versus high standards. What's one way we can begin as work-at-home moms, as moms, set an example for our children to practice self-compassion and not to be so hard on themselves when they do make a mistake?
That's such a great question. Very, very thoughtful. So, yeah, this is where I say to many people, be the change you wish to see in the world, right? So this isn't about telling your children what to do or how to respond if they, fail a test, for example, or don't make the soccer team, or, get in trouble for being late at school. This is where you get to model it, because modeling the behavior you want to see in your children is what's going to make the biggest impression on them. Not what you say, it's what you do. So my suggestion always is to, when you make a mistake, or when you experience a setback, whether it's in your personal life, in your family, right? Because we're not perfect mothers or fathers or parents, right? We say things we don't mean. We yell at our children because we're tired or exhausted that day, right? And we know it doesn't feel good. And these are opportunities to tell our children, hey, I made a mistake. And take responsibility for it. And then show ourselves that compassion, right? So not beating ourselves up, oh my God, I'm the worst mother in the world. But saying to ourselves, hey, that didn't feel good that I yelled at you, and I'm so sorry. And how can we move forward from here? If it doesn't involve our children, so many times I've said to my kids, oh God, I made such a blunder at work today, but this is how I handled it. So it's important, when you do make a mistake, when your children are watching, that you don't engage in that negative self-talk, right? That you don't personalize your failures. Oh, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. I'm so stupid. You're labeling yourself as stupid, and then you're modeling for your children exactly what you don't want.
Right.
Because you're not stupid. Maybe what you did wasn't the greatest, but it doesn't mean that you're a stupid person for it. But so often we habitually, without even realizing that there are witnesses, little tiny impressionable witnesses, our family members, right? Our children are listening and watching everything that you do.
Yeah.
And I think another thing is, which we completely gloss over, which is I want to mention, is when we receive a compliment, we often, and think about times when someone's complimented you, how often do you say thank you? Versus deflecting or diminishing the compliment. Right? We'll say, oh, you look so great, and, with that haircut, oh, God, I can't stand my hair. I can't do anything with it. Or my hair, I love your hair. Your hair is awesome. Right? So we deflect or we diminish. And so one of the things that I work with my clients with is really surrendering to receiving compliments. And this is something that you can model for your children. And it's something I'm not even aware of. So when someone gives me a compliment, I'm starting myself to get in the habit of just saying, thank you. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you so much for addressing all of that, Jackie. It was just one of those questions that shot off in my brain, like, oh my God, I totally have to ask this. So thank
It's
you.
such a great question because we don't realize, the impact that we make on our children, right? We want them to do as we say, not as we do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a dichotomy there, right? And so we want to be in alignment. Our behavior needs to be in alignment with what it is that we want.
Mm-hmm.
Or else it's confusing. It's like, Mom, you're saying this, but you're saying it's okay that I make a mistake. But when you make a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
you tell yourself what an idiot you are.
Right.
So what am I supposed to believe, right?
Yeah.
And that behavior is much more influential than what it is that you say.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Jennifer, before we switch gears, I want to pass the mic back to you and see if there was any follow-up questions or any responses to any of that conversation.
It was amazing, actually. And I really feel like this interview today is so timely because I know I suffer with struggling to accept compliments from people. I'm the famous person for, oh, that ring is beautiful. Oh, this, I got it at the grocery, at Walmart, or oh, this shirt, it's from Goodwill. You just, like you said, you just naturally deflect and play it down. And here I'm telling my kids, stop being down on yourself. And then I do stuff like that right in front of them. So
Exactly.
amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
We all
Okay.
do.
We totally do. So I guess we can shift gears now. I just wanted to give you that opportunity, Jennifer, because I knew you had stuff swirling in your brain. So we're actually going to shift gears and now apply some of this confidence talk that we've been talking about to running a business. So the first question that we have is about self-promotion, and it's important for anyone running a business. But as women, we often struggle with the concept of self-promotion. So what tips can you offer to help us be better at that?
Yeah. So a lot of the tips I've already shared is a great way to kind of set that foundation for showing up for yourself, your business, and promoting yourself. That's really going to start building your confidence by getting into this habit of receiving compliments, not personalizing your failures, taking credit for your successes. I think that's super, super important. In fact, I usually like to start there. What are you good at? What are some of your innate qualities and strengths and traits and talents? What are you proud of? That is really so important to be connected to those traits and those positive traits and attributes, because that will help you promote yourself,
right,
and help you be grounded when you do. So when you can go into a meeting or have a dialogue with someone about your business and you know that you are smart and that you are capable and resourceful, or whatever it is that you really genuinely feel proud of, then chances are that those dialogues are going to go so much better, and you're going to attract more business. So, but I think that one reason why we struggle to promote ourselves is what I said earlier, is that we tend to take things very personally. Men don't take things as personally. So as women, I think that we could do a better job of, separating out what's personal and what's not. Very often what happens as women is, we build up this courage, right? And to maybe promote ourselves to someone and talk about our business or ask for business, right? And often what happens, what's playing in the background, this tape is we're bracing actually for a no. So if we want to ask someone for their business and the person says no, not now, or just no, we make it mean something about who we are at our very core. And the recipient feels that, right? The person on the other end of the dialogue feels that. It's almost like saying, I'm going to ask you for this, and my energy is going to be wonky around it because my deepest fear is that you will say no, which in my mind feels like is going to feel like a rejection. And if you reject me, I just might implode, right? And so there's so much that we take to these dialogues, right? We make it these no's, we brace for these no's, we anticipate a no, and we make it so awful because of how we respond to that no. So rather than giving others the freedom to say no without making it mean anything about your worth or value, right? We walk into that conversation and it's so loaded, right? And it's so tempting as women to take these no's as a personal criticism when the truth is a lot of times it has nothing to do with you. You're not the focus of everyone's attention.
Right.
No is not about you as a person. It may be that they just don't need your services, or maybe the feedback was, that you got from your boss, for example, was really directed at your skill set rather than your value as a human being. So as women, I think we could do a much better job just being, being aware of, what we're anticipating when we ask for business, for example. And so one of the things I recommend is find something, get in the habit of asking people for something, but make it very small stakes. And you can start with even people that you know. Could you get up and get me my notepad or my journal on the counter, right? And so start getting in the habit of asking people for things. And notice what happens if they say no. Even better, you could meet with a friend or a colleague and have them and start asking them for things. It could be anything. Will you meet me for lunch tomorrow? Will you pay for my trip? Will you go to the cleaners for me? Will you come over and massage my neck? And then ask that other person to say no, so that you almost become desensitized to it. So that when you are in business and promoting yourself or marketing yourself and someone says no, it won't be that big of a deal. You'll be so used to it.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
But I have weird friends, so if I said, would you come over and rub my neck, most of them would be like, sure.
Right. But so this is where you want to say, I want to do an exercise with you.
Right.
And you ask, and your whole role, your job, say no to whatever I ask you to do.
Okay. Yeah. Make it clear from the get-go, like, this is what we're doing here.
Right. I did this with my husband, actually. And he's such a yes man that he kept saying, yes, that sounds good. And no, stay in your role. Your role is to say no.
Right.
So that when those critical times come, when you're really, putting yourself out there and you're feeling that courage to show up for yourself and ask for something that's even more meaningful and important, that you can handle the no.
Right.
So, Jackie, have you noticed that people who struggle with this persona of taking no's so personally in business tend to be that way in their personal lives as well? Or do you see kind of some people can handle one but not the other? How does that usually play out?
I think it's very connected.
Okay.
The way you do anything is the way you do everything. So if you have a hard time or you struggle with hearing no and personalizing it in your business, chances are it shows up in your personal life as well. You're probably struggling with that there too. So they're not really. You can't compartmentalize different parts of life and say. Now it can be with confidence. With confidence, you can feel like a really confident parent, right? But you might not be confident in business. So it's different when it comes to confidence, right? You can feel confident when it comes to playing the piano and doubtful when it comes to mastering a new language. So there's also which leads me to there is a little crossover between confidence and self-esteem. Right? And self-esteem is kind of a close cousin of confidence, if you will. So self-esteem is more state. So, studies have shown that if you have high confidence, you probably also have high self-esteem. But you can't have high confidence and low self-esteem. They pretty much act in accordance with one another. So self-esteem is more stable. It's a mindset or an attitude about our self-worth and self-value. It allows us to believe that we are lovable and that we're simply valuable because we're human. Self-confidence is really tied to our feelings about what we can achieve, which means that, again, you can feel confident in one area of your life but lack confidence in another.
Yeah.
So self-esteem is more stable and pervasive, and I think it's important to have that if you're in business. It is, again, a buffer against those setbacks, because you're not going to be devastated, right, when someone says no or when you make a mistake. If you have a healthy self-esteem, and you make a mistake, you're not going to take it as a personal attack.
So this is a good lead-in, actually, to our next question, and
Yes.
I received with my first coaching session with you kind of a crash course in this area, and that's enforcing boundaries. I have business boundaries. I have a policies page on my website, and I send it to all my new clients, but I never enforce them. And so I've learned, since I started coaching with you, very much the importance of those boundaries and how much my lack of confidence in my ability to get new clients was playing into not enforcing my boundaries.
Right.
So how do you recommend, how do we deal with that?
How do we deal with
when you're lacking confidence, but you need to enforce your boundaries? Right.
So this is where it's important to examine the thoughts that are kind of coming up that are creating that lack of confidence. So it could be if I don't work with this client, or if I don't take on this client, I'm never going to get another client again. Or I'm going to live in a van down by the river, right? Those are what we call reptilian beliefs. They're it's the oldest part of our brain, which is responsible for broadcasting lack and attack fears. We all have this part of our brain. It is antiquated. That has not really evolved as we as human beings have evolved. So it's important to recognize the thoughts that are coming up for you that are making making it hard for you or challenging for you to enforce those boundaries. And so when you're hesitant to enforce those boundaries, because you can set boundaries, but they mean nothing until you enforce them, right? And recognizing, what am I telling myself if I were to enforce this boundary, for example, that I don't work on weekends? Well, I will upset my client, or I should be always available to my client, or I will lose my client, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what? And really challenging those beliefs.
Mm.
Is it true that if you enforce this boundary, that your client will fire you? Because that's usually our worst fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that could or may or may not be true, right? But it's the stories that we tell ourselves that keep us from honoring and enforcing really our values,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so we send mixed messages. Well, these are my boundaries, and I expect you to honor them, but you have to honor them first, right? Because we teach people how to treat us.
Yeah.
So it's so important that we look at what are the thoughts that are coming up, what are the beliefs that are coming up, what are the fears that are coming up, what are the worries or concerns that are coming up. And sometimes we may lose a client,
Mm-hmm.
but what are we really losing?
Yeah.
Maybe there's an opportunity, right, when we empty our elevator out to really gain the kind of people who are going to reflect back to us what it is, how we want to be treated. But you have to treat yourself that way first. It's like, I want you to treat me like I'm a queen, right? Not like I'm, like kiss my feet, but I want you to treat me this way, in this certain way. Then you have to do that yourself,
Right.
right?
And I was going to ask you, so what if you enforce those boundaries and you do get pushback, and you had mentioned that you might lose a client. It might happen. So
Mm-hmm.
the question that I have as a follow-up is, how do you settle the negative talk in terms of, I'm going to lose a client, or the client gets back to you and says, well, I don't know if that can work. How can you settle that negativity? Like, this is going to happen again if I continue to enforce this. You know what I'm trying to ask? Like, how do you get out of that cycle of, okay, it happened once. Now, if I continue enforcing this, it's going to happen again. How to just flip that out of your brain and not continue that thought process.
Right. Well, notice the story you're telling yourself. Just because something happened once is not a predictor for the future, right? So often we use our painful experiences as predictors for our future experiences, and then we talk ourselves back to where we were before, which feels really crappy,
Right?
because when you compare the feeling that comes from being soft on your boundaries and giving into your client's demands, right? Versus standing up for what's important to you, your values, and how you want to run your business. Which one feels worse? And potentially losing that client, right? But what's cool about it is you're never going to know until you try. You set those boundaries and enforce them. And more often than not, people will be thankful. It's sort of like when you set boundaries with your kids. Right? If you let your kids run amok, I want M&Ms and I want to stay up till 10 and you can't tell me what to do and I don't feel like doing my homework. And if you don't have those boundaries with your children, do you know what they feel? They don't feel safe.
Yeah.
They want
that structure.
They need somebody to step into their leadership shoes and say, I'm in charge here.
Yeah.
And here's the protocol. Here are the boundaries. Here's what you can do and can't do. You can't eat M&Ms, for breakfast, right? And it's the same thing that we do with our clients. Not that we're bossing our clients around. I mean, there's certain dialogue that needs to happen. But some clients will think nothing of calling you on the weekends because they probably lack boundaries. I had a potential client like that who was calling me at 5 a.m. I fired her before I even started working with her.
Yeah.
Because I thought, I don't want to work with someone who doesn't have those boundaries and is going to think nothing of calling me at all sorts of hours.
Right.
During the night and on weekends. So I think that more often than not, when you set a boundary, it feels good to the recipient. They know what's expected of them. They know what's okay, and they know what's not okay.
Right.
And for most people, that feels good.
Yes, absolutely. Jennifer, I hear you over here.
I'm just going to stay in my little corner for right now and think about what I've done. No, it's a learning process for me, and it's actually been really healthy. And I did do an exercise recently with a client where I spelled out the boundaries that were being crossed, and her response, of course, that 17 hours between when I sent the email and got her call or her email reply were like torture for me, because I was telling myself all those terrible stories. She's going to react like this, or she's going to say that. And then when it came down to it, she was apologetic. She agreed to comply to the best of her ability. And now I feel like we're going to have a much better working relationship moving forward. So I don't know what I had myself all upset about.
Well, and sometimes you might get that pushback. It's not like that's always going to be successful, but it's like, I want to say, expect that you might. That's a possibility. And people, I call it the change back attack. Sometimes people don't like when you've been operating a certain way for a certain amount of time and you're making changes. Sometimes people don't like that, so you might experience some pushback. And that's okay. It's actually a good thing. It's telling you that you're taking care of yourself and you're setting up a healthy structure for you, because you are going to have a relationship with yourself for the rest of your life. And that is the most important relationship, is the one you have with you.
Yeah.
And either clients will respect that or they'll go away.
Yep.
But if they go away, that's a good thing, because then you now have room for people to work with you who are more like you, who are going to respect you and treat you like the professional that you are.
Yes. Love it.
Yeah. And Jennifer, I mean, really kudos to you, because I know that was very courageous. And I know that period of time where you're doing something really brave and you're like, not breathing, waiting for that,
Definitely.
waiting for that response. And, I'm glad it worked out.
Yes, me too. And I'm super proud of you, Jennifer. So, Jackie, you have an awesome confidence quiz on your website, and everybody listening will post a link in the show notes. Can you tell me a little bit about what it is and how our listeners can use the tool to help them understand their own confidence better?
Yeah, it's really just a few questions. I don't know, I think there's 10 or 12 questions on there. And it's more of an assessment, really. So, I wouldn't, it gives you an idea of where your confidence level is and certain things that you can do to build up your confidence or expand your confidence. Again, it's just gives you an idea of kind of where you land on the scale of confidence, from no confidence all to, very confident. And again, it's, confidence is so elusive and can be so fleeting because it is a feeling, and it really comes from you trusting that you are capable of handling whatever it is in front of you, regardless of the outcome. I would, go onto my website. I know you're going to provide the link and fill it out, and you'll get the results immediately. And listen to this call, and listen to some of those tips that I shared, because everyone has the ability. Confidence is, partially encoded in our genes. Some researchers say that up to 50% of our confidence is genetic. But the good news is that even if this is the case, you can develop confidence. You can build up that part of you. And I'm speaking from experience, because I started a business 10 years ago and I knew nothing about starting a business.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have a whole lot of confidence when I first started. I was learning a new skill set, and I was learning how to run an online practice. And so there was a steep learning curve there. And it brought up all sorts of beliefs and fears about my abilities. But doing the work that I shared with you today, and hiring a coach, I think, is always a really good idea if you're serious about building your confidence and building your business. I think it's one of the best investments you can make in yourself. I've worked with a coach on and off for 10 years. I find that it's a beautiful demonstration of taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And as mothers and as employers, we often find ourselves at the bottom of the list, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So, hiring someone to support you and, guide you towards what it is that you want, whether it's expanding your confidence or your competence or certain experiences you want to have, is always a really good idea.
Awesome. Well, I find it so interesting that you said that some competence is genetic. And so that's really interesting to me. But I wanted to reiterate to everybody that in the show notes, we'll have a link to the competence quiz. And I'm going to pass the mic back to Jennifer.
All right. Last question, Jackie. What one tip or piece of advice would you like to leave our listeners with? Again, we're work-at-home moms. We are struggling, probably most of us, with all of the things we've talked about today, or at least some of them. What one last thing do you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because there's so many things I could share. But I think the one thing that I would love to impart and leave you with is to be kind to yourself. As women, we're often in this rat race, on this wheel of, doing as much as we can, bringing home the bacon, frying it up in a pan. That used to be a commercial from back in my day, where we're expected to do everything, even more truer today than back in the 60s when I was growing up. Women are working outside the home, and they're primarily responsible for raising their family and taking care of the home. So be kind and gentle with yourself. You can't do it all. You're not supposed to do it all. And, give yourselves the compassion for doing what it is that you do. And the fact that you get up every day and acknowledge and take credit for what you do well.
That's great. That's great advice. And I think we can all relate to that, and definitely can use the pat on the back every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. There's not enough of that.
Yes. Well, I think that wraps things up. Am I correct there, Jennifer?
That's what I see in my notes. That was all our questions.
Awesome. So, Jackie, thank you for joining us today. Now, before we close out the show, how can listeners connect with you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, and hopefully you can provide the link to that, www.jackiegartman.com. And I have a blog on my website. I have, again, the competence quiz. So you can find out more about me and my services there. You can sign up for my newsletter, which comes out every couple of months. If you want to contact me directly, I do offer complimentary 20-minute calls. So if you are interested in hiring a coach, or you're not even sure, we can hop on the phone together. So you can set that up through my website.
Awesome. And yes, we will definitely have a link to your website in the show notes as well. So it'll be nice and easy for people to just click and go to your website. So thank you. Oh, before you go, I would love to connect with you. You can follow me on Instagram at DV Podcasts. And you can also find me on Facebook. Just look for Darlene Victoria Digital Media.